And I'm Guy, and this is your home for everything Alberta independence. Let's get into it, Nat.
Yes. First of all, thank you so much for joining us today. Please don't forget to subscribe. Again, it is what really helps us out the most. I've seen some more people have subscribed, so thank you so much. Also, we try to read most, if not all, of your comments live, but we do pause the whole show for super chats, and those really help us out as well. And we have memberships.
Absolutely.
When I concentrate, I can say properly.
Somebody left a comment saying you weren't concise, so now I think she wants to be more concise.
Yeah. Hello, Glenn says, good evening, Nat and Guy. Another gorgeous day in Calgary. Well, I'm glad to hear so. And it's raining here once again, because we know how it goes. But, and Yazinski, thank you so much, speaking of pausing the whole show, for the $5 super chat saying happy Wednesday, Nat and the Guy, and everyone in the chat. And same to you, and thank you for being here and being so nice as well. Trees of Freedom waves, so hello. Beulah Hillier says, good evening from Innisfail, Alberta. Hello, and hope all is well over there. And Silverfeet says, hi, James Bond. I don't know why Silverfeet always says hi, James Bond.
I don't know.
Do you look like James, or do I look like James Bond?
Well, I don't think you look like James Bond. Maybe a Bond girl.
Yeah, no. But Silverfeet, speaking of Argentina, always actually bringing it home, and England is actually now going home. So glad to see about that. I know Silverfeet watches the World Cup. Last few matches, the Guy will finally be rid of my football watching ways for once.
Well, she was watching the World Cup, and I said, you have to go get ready. If you don't you have a 2-hour window, we're not going to make the show. And she's like, well, no, I have to watch it. I said, it's bad luck when you stop watching. Yeah. She stopped watching, and guess who came back?
Argentina scored as I was starting to get ready. So there you go. And Trees of Freedom says hello. So hello. And should we start with, what is it, breaking news?
Yeah, let's get into some breaking news. Actually, I've got a lot of articles today, so.
Yes.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
Let's start with the cover story. CBC Watcher says, quote, Assembly of First Nations National Chief Cindy Woodhouse Nepinak yesterday criticized the federal government's push for faster project approvals, arguing that a one-year timeline for impact assessments subordinates the Crown's obligations and puts deadlines on First Nations rights. As they always say.
Well, I think you might have missed one of the comments in the thing because somebody mentioned this. Why is there a fake First Nations?
Oh, okay.
It was the first comment actually after my hand waving.
Yes, because it's not showing up. Sorry about that. Peter says, why is there an Indian from India in the Coastal First Nations organization to begin with, and why are they getting paid by George Soros? What's going on here?
Well, yeah, Coastal First Nations doesn't have any real history. It's actually made up. A lot of people don't know that. And we got fake chiefs demanding consultations and everything else. We'll get into the clip here, but it's very interesting because the federal government is saying they want to make consolidate the consultation period to 1 year. If that consultation period is whittled down to 1 year, that's still too long for Alberta independence. That would mean our vote goes on October 19th. If we wanted October 17th for the binding referendum of 2027, we wouldn't fit within that timeline. And this is one of the big reasons I keep saying we need a leadership review on Danielle Smith. She's already mentioned that she's going to go into the consultation process. Now, if this is cleared and the federal government concedes that consultations are 1 year, that means we wouldn't make the October 17th, 2027 deadline for that. This is one of the big reasons I think we need somebody like Keith Wilson to take over the UCP.
Yes, continues. The position makes it clear First Nations leadership wants even more time, more consultations, and more leverage, regardless of the mounting economic costs to the rest of Canada. And yet it was expected as always. But let's watch her say it about how progressive that they have a female chief.
We have similar concerns about the bill that we expect on major projects this fall. In May, we received a discussion paper from the federal government titled Getting Major Projects Built. First, it needs to be stated clearly that the sweeping legislative and policy proposals in this discussion paper will fundamentally alter the way Canada protects or does not protect our planet. After initially providing just 30 days for a response, Canada extended the deadline to July 22nd of this year. Unfortunately, the revised timeline remains inadequate given the breadth of changes proposed. In addition to engagement, we identified other concerns, starting with the proposed 1 year deadline to complete all of Canada's impact assessment and decision making.
And I know this doesn't directly deal with pipelines in Alberta or directly with the Alberta independence movement, but it does because it sets precedents, and that's going to be the big problem here. We don't want the federal government setting precedents like this, and we're going to need a leader in the UCP that can ultimately say, no, we don't have to do a consultation process. A consultation process comes after the binding referendum. This was made clear months ago. The fact that this thing has even come up in the way that it has and the unjustified court ruling is just ridiculous.
You want to keep watching it?
Yeah, let's keep going.
We have said many times First Nations are for economic growth that will drive Canada's prosperity, but not at the expense of our rights or of the Crown's legal obligations to our people. A one-year timeline principally designed to attract investment subordinates the honour of the Crown to commercial imperatives. Instead, it'll give rise to questions about the legitimacy of approvals made without the Crown appropriately discharging its obligations to First Nations. The federal government can try and set up all the timelines that they want for project approvals, but they can't put a deadline on First Nations rights, and you have rights.
Okay, and we can leave it there. And it seems like the Canadian federal government has given way to specialty groups and classes and mass immigration. Alberta does not want to go down that route. No specialty groups and classes in a new and free Alberta is the way to go. Otherwise, we're going to keep running into things like this in the legal system. Everybody needs to be equal in the eyes of the law, period. Bruce Party brought this up well over a year ago. There was a lot of pushback when he first brought the idea up, and it seems like most of Alberta independents has come around to the idea and realized the mistakes Canada has made. And not only Canada, a lot of countries around the world are being fractured with specialty groups and classes and UN law taking precedent over their own law.
Yes, sorry. And I was checking if our systems were still working, but I was going to say, as you were saying, Bruce Party already mentioned it, and he did get a lot of pushback, but the fact that there's one group that gets an outsized say on everything does not make Canada a more equal place. It makes it less equal even, and the fact that most Canadians still think that it's a good idea, that they have to continue to beg on their knees for forgiveness for things that happened centuries ago.
Well, yeah, and it's not even specialty groups and classes at this point. They're going so far to make fractures with specialty groups and classes, but when it comes to First Nations, they're going a whole level further and making a whole new mechanism of a whole new legal system that takes precedent over the Canadian legal system in some cases, and this is absolutely ridiculous.
And again, doing away with things like private property just through these same mechanisms. But Corey Morgan also says we don't need their consent and they will keep their reserves.
And it's not, and again, we're not trying to take their land. They've already ceded the land within Alberta. They have a choice to make of their own, just like Albertans are going to have a choice to make. They can stay with Canada, they can come with Alberta, or they can negotiate a new deal with Alberta. That's up to each individual tribe. That's number one. But number two, the consultation process has very clearly been laid out for after a binding referendum takes place, not before. They're trying to rework the system, so they say we have to do it before. This would fundamentally take us into a timeline where we would have to have somebody sympathetic in winning the U.S. election to Alberta independence.
And this was again because this chief said they're not taking the land with them, AFN chief on separatist movement in Alberta. Mm-hmm. Apparently they talked about a lot of things during that little meeting they had. But next, hold on. Someone that was there. Just have to double check it. Someone that was there that was also involved in this was Dallas Brody, saying Vancouver City Hall debates the outrageous villages plan, aka...
No,
I know, sorry.
This was something completely different.
I know.
Oh, okay.
I just realized now. Vancouver City Hall debates the outrageous villages plan, aka 15-minute cities, and I was there to speak against it, says Dallas Brody.
Yeah, and Dallas Brody's doing a fantastic job in British Columbia. I know she's in British Columbia, but she has an Albertan type of attitude. It's a shame there are not more politicians like her. She's bringing up this thing of 15-minute cities. This has been around for years. Now they're actually trying to implement the policies to bring this in.
Hi everybody, Dallas Brody here. I'm standing outside of Vancouver City Hall where I spent the evening tonight waiting for my turn to speak. I was supposed to be speaker number 40, but they only got up to, I believe it was 25 tonight. So they've adjourned the hearing today until next Monday. Now, what was the hearing about? It was about this massive plan to absolutely reconfigure and redesign the entire city of Vancouver. Most people in Vancouver only became aware of this shocking plan about 2 weeks ago. It's going to create what they call villages, aka 15-minute cities, all over Vancouver, and they're in a very cynical and sneaky way. The city staff has decided to bring this forward for public hearing today, starting today, July 14th, in the middle of the summer, when I know so many people in Vancouver are away with their families or taking time out.
And again, they're doing things like this in Alberta as well. I think they'll probably try to set the precedent in British Columbia, and whatever works and the way that it works, they'll try to feed this into probably Edmonton and Calgary first. There was rumors of Edmonton and Calgary going first.
And they're not focused at all on politics. This is what we're seeing more and more. In any event, despite the fact that they tried to pull this fast one on the electorate of Vancouver, there are at least 192 speakers signed up to speak. We only got to 25 today, and I would say that the comments tonight were running 5-1 opposed to this crazy plan. And I have to say that the people who stood up to support it really looked like they were practiced plants, and that they were sort of the ideologues behind a lot of this, eco-density.
And pause it one more time. And I will say, if anybody is in British Columbia, I know we're primarily an Alberta independence podcast, but if anybody's going to be there, it is summertime. A lot of people are on vacation. They had to postpone it because there were so many people that wanted to speak on this issue. Show up. This will put a roadblock in their way. And when they try to do the same thing with these sneaky meetings and try to push this thing through, saying they have had a consultation with the public, we need to show up in Calgary and Edmonton too, even if that means a drive.
Villages, making everybody walk everywhere, and strangling the city with more and more of these intense little villages. Nobody wants this plan. I've had hundreds of calls, texts, and emails from constituents in Vancouver, Quilchena, saying how much they're upset about this. And my riding and people in my riding tend to be pretty apathetic, but this one has them wide awake. So anyway, I was here tonight waiting my turn. Didn't get on tonight, but I will be back on Monday, and I will make sure I get a chance to speak.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And my hat's always off to Dallas Brody. She is doing a fantastic job in British Columbia. There's one other thing I want to say. A lot of people don't know the implications of 15-minute cities. It's kind of like a digital ID where they want to stack everything else on top of that as far as the city goes. Vancouver is planning to have... I guess they would kind of be like flock cameras in the States, but the Canadian version where every single license plate in and out of downtown would have to pay a toll going in and out of downtown. They're going to want to do something like that for each of these individual cities. They want to know each resident living in that 15-minute location. And if you drive your car out and you drive your car back, there's going to be a fee for it every time.
Yes. But now go to your comments and then into Alberta Stay Free. Glenn Gunn says she's a mouthpiece, talking not about Dallas Brody, obviously, but about the chief, progressive chief. Stephen Jensen, hello, says, spoke to Jason Levine this morning. I guess I'm now the point of contact for sign distribution for the greater area around the whistle stop. Loved my cartoon video. Didn't know he watched my channel. We will watch it here today as well. Yeah. And that's great to hear as well. So if anybody needs a sign, please contact Stephen Jensen.
Absolutely. And that was a good choice by Jason Levine there.
Exactly. And, Todd already says, I want a sign, one of your signs. So there you go. Where are we? Gotta go back up. Silverfeet says, yay, Argentina won. Yes, and I think it's good that they are able to silence mouths, because with this one, there wasn't any VAR Argentina or Argent FIFA going on because they scored all the way towards the end. Mm-hmm. And because I went to go get ready. Silverfeet also says, this explains it. Says the unacceptable fringe said, guy looks like James Bond in the telethon promo video, and now I can't unsee it. I guess because I haven't paused on like each person individually. I'll pause on us at least to see if that is true.
Well, I seen I had a lovely little cape in there. I think we're going to play the preview again. Cape too. Oh, you got a cape as well?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know you had a cape.
Yeah, but we're playing it in a little bit. Philip Vespa says, says, you cannot reconcile staying in Canada when a small percentage of the population have a veto on economic prosperity. Why can't we have a leader like Javier Milei? Independence is the only way. Vamos Argentina. Sí, vamos Argentina.
Yeah, and we need to really recognize the fundamental first principle mistakes that Canada has made and continues to make. And one of those big mistakes was specialty groups in classes. If we don't fix this at the founding of a free and independent Alberta, these same things will pop up later, especially with globalist organizations like the UN, who are really putting pressure on countries like Canada to bring in UNDRIP law and all kinds of other laws.
Mm-hmm. Almost Argentina. I was trying to do the accent, but I can do the Chilean one, but that one's even worse. Okay, now let's go into Alberta Stay Free, and then we'll continue reading your comments.
Free home Alberta, where the roots run deep and the money trees grow.
Let's start with...
I got a big Alberta Stay Free section today because I just kept adding and adding. Articles just kept coming up throughout the day.
Posts. Let's start with, see, I did it all wrong. Let Alberta decide. And if you don't follow them, go follow them now. It's Keith Wilson's and Tanya Clemens' organization, third-party advertiser, says the issue is larger than Thomas Lukasik or Forever Canadian. Elections Alberta is the institution Albertans must trust to administer one of the most important votes in our history. That trust depends upon independence, impartiality, transparency, and equal treatment. Oh, I keep going. Okay. A campaign is now transformed into something else merely by avoiding the precise wording of the ballot question. A province-wide effort expressly organized to persuade Albertans to vote to remain in Canada is campaigning. Elections Alberta should acknowledge the obvious, apply the law equally, and close any pathway for undisclosed, unlimited, or outside money to influence Alberta's decision. The credibility of the institution and public confidence in the referendum result are more important than defending their erroneous interpretation.
Yeah, and this is the first of a series of articles that we're going to have, and we're going to continue to hone in on this particular issue because this is not only corruption from Forever Canada, it's becoming very obvious that Elections Alberta is having a lot of corruption running through it. The fact that they're not addressing this or even giving some kind of public statement saying we're looking into this at a minimum.
Mm-hmm. In your opinion, just who knows how picky they are. But I do like this poster. It completely exemplifies Lukasik's side.
Yeah, and we can keep going on because they got a series of articles about this particular issue. And again, we need to be calling Elections Alberta and making a little bit of a fuss about this. They have corrected a few things in the past. They've been getting a lot of phone calls about this, and it's mum is the word. They are not saying anything about this.
Mm-hmm. And look at that, Stephen Jensen. If you don't follow Stephen Jensen, please go follow him. Says Live Free Honey or Mike Freedom Money. Here's a cartoon video I created from the song you started on the Unacceptable Fringe on Monday's live stream. Hope you like it. And we're gonna watch it now. Please don't copyright strike us, Stephen.
In Alberta's fields where the black gold flows, a Forever Canadian banner proudly shows. Petitions and flags and elbows held high, but behind the curtain, the questions multiply. Where's the money coming from, and why the delay on the rules that should keep the grift at bay? Forever Canadian, elbows up high, getting the folks with the patriotic lie. Push the vaccine, wave the make-believe flag, while foreign money fills the campaign bag. Thomas Lukasuk dodging TPA reports, no declaration, just shady sports. Skimming in unity, shining name, lack of transparency, it's all the same. Forever Canadian, the slogan rings proud, but the donor disclosures, they're lost in the cloud. TPA registration, it came running late after complaints.
Okay, you can leave it there, and I will tell everybody to go watch that video. It's absolutely fantastic. And subscribe to Stephen Jensen, not just on X, but also on YouTube. He's doing a lot of fantastic AI videos, and he's getting better every single time. I thought this was one of the best because it dealt with a very specific issue. It added comedy. I liked the AI that was going on there. The one issue I had with it is he made Thomas Lukasik look way too good.
Yes, he does not look like that. But next, this coming Saturday, and again, we continue to talk about it because the Alberta Independence Telethon is coming up this Saturday, July 18th from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., 12-hour stream on 10 different channels with a bunch of different hosts. We were invited very generously by John Bolton, and we're very grateful to him for that. So again, we'll watch this and then talk a bit more about it.
And absolutely fantastic. You can leave it there. It's going to be this Saturday. It's going to be a big event. Hopefully, we are going to need money for this non-binding event. Not us, but the 6 major third-party advertisers, I will say.
This is to, again, raise money for the 6 third-party advertisers.
Oh, I think it's 7 now, actually. I apologize, but they just added one more.
Okay. I was trying to go to the list of them. Now I can't find the list. Oh, there we go. So it's Alberta Women for Independence, Alberta's Choice, Stay Free Alberta, Pathway to Independence, The Levine Show, and Let Alberta Decide, plus maybe one more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say we were very honored because we were the only people outside of the country. I feel like we're kind of representing all those Canadians that have been pushed out of their own country and now are living abroad and support Alberta independence. There are a lot of Canadian refugees, I guess you would call us, that are supporting Alberta independence because you really represent those Western values that Canada has turned their back on and is no longer honoring.
And again, it's that one ray of hope, that one spark of hope that a lot of us still see for something that we wanted to try to save, I guess, but it became impossible to.
Yeah.
We realized that soon enough where we could leave, but too early to save for Alberta.
Absolutely. And I'm going to say there has to be well over 1 million people that have fled Canada. It's 241,000 a year. A large portion of those are conservatives pushed out by a majority liberal government. When the binding referendum comes, a lot of those people are going to be moving to Alberta to vote in that referendum and try to take at least a piece of Canada back, as well as I would say national conservative Canadians that are willing to look past the fact that Poilievre says you have to vote harder and only I can make the change. Some national conservatives can see past that and realize, no, the citizens in Alberta have the same fundamental first principles as the Conservative Party, and they don't need politicians to make the change. They have citizens making the change.
I wanted to see if you do actually look like it. I don't know what happened to your hair there.
Well, I don't care. It's great. They did a great job.
They did. But it looks like you're wearing a school uniform for Alberta. You go to the Alberta school.
I'm the Alberta schoolboy.
Of magic and wizardry. But next, then, continuing down that... Oh, hold on. No. First, let me scroll down. Thank you so much, Stephen Jensen, for the $2 super chat saying James Bond with MI6. Mexican, I guess, intelligence 6 at this point. But thank you so much.
Well, I used to work at a little bar called The Winking Judge. It closed down now, but it was in downtown Vancouver, directly on the other corner from the movie theater. When James Bond came out a couple times and I was working the door there, people would come by and say, oh, you look like the guy that played the most recent one, I think, Daniel Craig.
Well, because you would dress up with, well, not dress up. You had always a suit,
yeah,
sometimes a suit and tie. And you did kind of look like a Russian villain as well. That's what I first thought when I met him.
Half Russian villain, half James Bond, I guess.
He doesn't have any Russian in him, don't worry. But continuing down that line of the Elections Alberta, Lukasik disaster, Alberta Proud Dad says, quote, Elections Alberta seems to be one-sided when it comes down to third-party advertisers in Alberta.
Yeah, and I'm glad somebody was noticing the same thing because I was pointing this out. They keep saying foreign interference with us, but we are being very transparent with all of our money, with registering third-party advertisers, as well as getting advice that those third-party advertisers actually know you can only take money from inside of Alberta, not from foreign governments, not from outside of Canada, but not even outside of Alberta. So federal interference, I think, is a big thing with Lukasik. I would not be surprised if his coffers were filled with federal money.
In your opinion?
Now, in my opinion, there's something very nefarious going on with Elections Alberta in this province. You know, on one side, on the independent side, you have TPAs. All of them have to disclose and say who's giving the money and how they're spending that money, that they provide receipts. On the other side, you have Forever Canadian, who doesn't have to do a damn thing because Elections Alberta says they're not campaigning. Well, this right here, it literally says campaign. So what is it? You know, it was funny. The Forever Canadian people were saying that we were foreign funded. No other third-party advertisers, and they're not foreign funded. And we can see they're not foreign funded because they have to be transparent. But the Forever Canadian people, they don't have to be transparent. So if anybody here is going to be foreign funded, it's probably the Forever Canadian people.
And you can leave it there. And I will say, I don't know about foreign funded, but federal funded, that's not allowed either. And that's what I would expect a lot of this money to be coming from Forever Canada, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. But next, Corey Morgan says the solution is
one more thing before we move on from that, because I think we had 3 stories in a row about the scandal with Forever Canada. Again, we can contact Elections Canada through email or give them phone calls to keep reporting on this situation, to keep applying pressure. And it's fantastic that Stephen Jensen made that AI video specifically about this, to get awareness about this issue out. Because once they do have to report their finances, if something funny is going on there, that's going to completely shut them down. That's going to be a big advantage for Alberta independence, because Forever Canada right now seems to be the biggest organization, even though they're claiming $0. Mm-hmm.
Yes, but as I was saying, Corey Morgan says, quote, the solution is simple. Alberta should charge tolls on goods coming from BC by rail. Because National Post says, quote, letting BC charge tolls on new Alberta pipeline is trade barriers, quote unquote, on steroids, say critics. The federal government's decision to allow BC to take royalties on Alberta's oil in new West Coast pipeline could open a Pandora's box.
Yeah, it's time for Alberta to start playing hardball. And when we get our independence, we are going to play hardball there. This is absolutely ridiculous. Paying tolls. We're not a foreign government here. We're with inside the same Canada. Why aren't we charging tolls on them for everything that goes across Alberta, which is most of what comes into the port of Vancouver? I'm all for no tolls going both ways and we can cooperate. I think that's the best way. But it looks like behind the scenes what Mark Carney is trying to do here is not only put a carbon tax on, but put tolls for oil going again through each province for specialty groups and classes like First Nations. I mean, there's going to be no money left to build Alberta infrastructure, and this oil is coming out of Alberta ultimately.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and it already is increasingly and incredibly and even harder for provinces to trade between each other than with the United States, for example.
Absolutely.
That is actually one of the talking points that would make, if Alberta were independent, then it could actually make those decisions for itself instead of having to listen to both the federal government but also other provinces.
And
but yes, thank you so much, Max from Freedom Calendar, for the $12.34 super chat saying, quote,
thank you.
I will run the main telethon live stream. The one people will see and be replicated by other podcasters. Hope to see you on Saturday. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks to Max for setting everything up. If you haven't checked out Freedom Calendar on YouTube or on X, his X account is fabulous as well. Go subscribe to him. He's the one that makes all this really possible behind the scenes, setting up the audio, setting up a lot of the visual for a lot of different in-person events or even digital events as well.
And Teresa Freedom, thank you so much for the $2 super chat saying contact Elections Alberta, not Elections Canada. Yes.
Oh, sorry.
I forgot to correct the guy. So when he gets one thing in his head, then it becomes increasingly harder for him to say the correct one. Elections Alberta. Contact Elections Alberta via email or phone or however you can. But thank you, Teresa Freedom, for that clarification. And I will probably put a clarification at the bottom of the video as well.
Yeah.
Apologies for that. But next, where are we? Marty up north says, quote, Carney has a higher approval rating in Alberta than Smith or Poilievre.
And again, after October 19th, we're going to have a leadership review on Danielle Smith if we want to keep a tight timeline. If we want to get this thing done by October 17th, 2027 for a binding referendum. It's not going to happen with Danielle Smith. That's obvious at this point by watching her interviews. She'll say, yeah, a spring referendum, that sounds good within a year. But then she goes through all these different hurdles and other interviews that she's doing, saying she has to ask the federal government for clarity on different positions for what makes a secure vote. Is it 50 plus one? She's saying no. She's saying she has to get clarity from the federal government. It could be 60 or 75%, which is absolutely ridiculous. Number one. Number two, having to consult before the binding referendum is going to put us over that timeline to begin with. So this is another reason we need to get rid of her. But we're going to need a strong candidate if we're going to have a leadership review on Danielle Smith.
We've also been talking how nationally a lot of people are shocked. A lot of conservatives are shocked by Mark Carney having such a high approval rating, but they don't seem to understand that a lot of people that would have voted for the Conservatives, but who have seen and continue to be disappointed, and again, the guy is one of the examples, have already left. So when polling or when looking at Mark Carney's numbers, most of the people left that support him will support him because they're okay with what's going on in the country. And I think in Alberta specifically with this, a lot of people shouldn't be shocked either. I'm not shocked either because both Poilievre and Danielle Smith have completely disappointed.
You can leave that up there.
Have disappointed the majority of Albertans as well. So this is
I think something completely different is going on here. Now, for national Canada, I believe Mark Carney's poll numbers are staying strong because Conservatives are leaving the country. I don't think that's happening as much in Alberta because there is a strong enough economy where people aren't losing their jobs and things like that. But what I've noticed through a lot of interviews on social media that I've seen coming out or articles and things like that is Conservatives aren't going to poll over the phone anymore. This happened with Trump voters in the States as well. So Conservatives just don't trust polling. So when polling is calling Conservative households or Alberta independence type households, they're just not answering the questions. And this is creating a false illusion, I think, Mark Carney's poll numbers are much higher in Alberta than they actually are. I think Alberta is actually the exception. I think what is happening with the rest of Canada, though, is Canada is emptying out of Conservatives under a majority Mark Carney government.
Could be that, but again, I do still think that a lot of, many Conservatives might have not even answered the phone, but the ones that did and that did poll in this and have Pierre Poilievre and Danielle Smith at this level might also be showing, I don't know how to phrase this, might be showing a greater push for Alberta's independence, because for people that are supportive of Alberta's independence, both Danielle Smith and Pierre Poilievre have been huge disappointments, especially at this moment.
Yeah, absolutely. But Mark Carney is not going to be that high. And I've been reading the comments on our videos, and we've had a couple articles about Statistics Canada and stuff like that. And people are saying, oh, no, I'm just not answering the phone. When they leave a message, leave me a code to call back with. I'm not even calling back. I'm disregarding the code. So.
But again, thank you so much, Max Freedom Calendar, for the $567, interesting numbers, for the $567 super chat, saying we're working our behinds off, I'm going to have to say, for that telethon live stream to become reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like there might be following up events after that. Derek was suggesting some things like that. I think that is a absolutely fantastic idea. With that telethon, they're going to have a live event as well at one of the pizza shops. So that should be fantastic. I will say, John Bolton is doing a fantastic job on this telethon. I mean, he has worked extremely hard, and all the content creators in Alberta Independence have really come together. It's nice to have a movement where everybody is more than willing to do just a little bit. So it doesn't fall on one person's
But
shoulders.
Max also, Max is the one that's been setting everything up and is a technical know-how. And I know because we get a bunch of DMs from Max about how things are being set up and what links and what this and that. So also a huge thank you to Max as well. I was going to say something else, I forgot. Stephen Jensen also, thanks so much for the $2 super chat, saying that poll is totally bogus, a propaganda piece. But again, that's why I was saying I don't know how actually bogus or how to fully interpret it. We could have interpreted your way, my way, different way. But I think it might actually be reflecting a sentiment of more support for Alberta independence, which has now been, I would say, almost fully betrayed by both Poilievre and Danielle Smith, and then saying, no, I don't support them. And then the Carney voters or the Carney people being the ones that do answer the phone the most.
Well, Carney voters are the boomer crowd, the elbows up crowd, and they are really motivated to report to Statistics Canada. And I think that's what you're seeing there ultimately.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it didn't say when it was taken. There wasn't further information on that. But again, interesting. Either way we interpret it, I think it is interesting. But lastly, hold on. From Riley Donovan, we have this saying, quote, ban foreigners from buying Canadian farmland.
Yeah, and I believe she's going to be talking about British Columbia here, but in a new and free Alberta, we can actually do this. Only citizens should own property. That will create house prices to go down. It won't be as much of, it won't be so much of an inflated asset by having foreign investors come into the country and things like that.
3 American billionaires are quietly buying up massive volumes of BC farmland. From Kamloops to Dunster to Pemberton, our own farms are being scooped up to be used as tax havens and luxury vacation grounds, all thanks to our relaxed farm ownership laws. Case number 1. Heir to the Walmart fortune, the world's richest family, Stan Kroenke has bought up BC's most historic, largest ranches. The Douglas Lake Ranch, Dang Ranch, Alkali, James Cattle, Risk Creek, and Kelchina Cattle Company. Stan Kroenke now owns and controls 1.2 million acres of BC farmland, worth $37 billion, owner of the LA Rams and Trump donor. Kroenke became America's largest private landowner in 2026. Silent Stan has largely avoided the media, especially after he launched a British TV show glorifying the hunt of elephants, lions, and other endangered
You can leave it
animals.
there, and I will say this is going to be an issue when Alberta does get its independence, because there's going to be a lot of oil and natural resources in the ground as well. Only citizens should own land. I believe that needs to be in the Constitution ultimately, and I think we're seeing a lot of problems with this, with foreign buyers coming in, foreign governments coming in into the United States, into Canada, and to other places, not only inflating home values, but taking over massive swaths of farmland.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not a fan of billionaires or Bill Gates, for example, owning a bunch of farmland in the U.S. as well. But I guess in Canada's land or in BC's land, land's case, at least it's Americans. And maybe it's because Americans and the dollar and the billionaires are actually making more money to be able to buy those lands than people within BC themselves that have to sell their land.
Well, I would also say having caps on how much one individual can actually own of land. I mean, being able to buy off a lot of land is fine, but there's a certain point where some, especially with a natural resource rich environment like Alberta, you might have private industry try to buy off all of Alberta through one individual or something like that.
Yes, but then you're also putting a cap on private property, which goes against,
But it's not just private property in this case because it's natural resource development and things like that. And this is how we're trying to build a lot of infrastructure and void all taxes on all citizens within Alberta. So you have to realize, especially when we talk to Bruce Party, I was kind of trying to bring this up. And it's like, if you allow, because in Alberta, if you're just going to allow anybody to buy up any amount of land, you're going to have big corporations buying up the entire province almost immediately if they open up that land.
I would be in agreement if it was foreign large corporations, but I do think, and as Bruce Party, and again, during that interview, we were all trying to parse through this idea because he also didn't have a very established answer to when we asked him what would happen if a big corporation or a big owner came and purchased all of the natural resources essentially of Alberta. And I would agree with not letting foreigners buy that, but at the same time, I am wary now, especially with BC, of private property being stripped away from people as well.
No, it's not private property being stripped. It's saying individuals can own maybe, I don't know, say 1,000 acres. 1,000 acres is more than anybody's going to do with a piece of land. When you start getting into, I'm going to buy 100,000 acres, things like this.
But who gets to decide that? The government?
Ultimately, what Bruce Party said, well, maybe you forgot the interview we did with Bruce Party. Ultimately, what Bruce Party...
Ultimately,
okay, we can move on since you want to keep interrupting.
No,
here.
tell me. Ultimately what?
No. Ultimately, the government is going to own the majority of the land in the founding of Alberta because they're going to take it over from the Canadian government. So they're going to have to decide, and Bruce Party was talking about this, how do you parse out that land to the citizens over time, or how do you let that land go? Because that is going to be a huge power grab for whatever government is in place, even if his system is adopted.
And again, I do agree with not letting foreign buyers come up and buy most, if any, I would say, even of the land in Alberta or wherever in BC. But at the same time, I don't know if I want to place restrictions on who can own what.
Absolutely. I want to place restrictions because what happens if one buyer comes in with $1 trillion and says, I'm buying up all of Alberta?
It would have to be an Albertan.
Yeah. So you think it's fine for one Albertan to buy up all the property in Alberta? That's absolutely not okay.
Not all the property, but again, you're thinking natural resources, which would be managed maybe differently.
I'm just saying, is it okay for one individual to buy up all the land? Absolutely not.
But then again, I don't want the government making those decisions. Okay.
I think you're wrong in this situation.
I think
100%. No, because it's going to lead to...
I think you're straying away from the free market.
No.
Too much. And putting too much trust in government.
Absolutely
being
not.
able to manage land, which is what's happening right now in a bunch of different places. But let's go back to your comments before the guy gets more upset. Todd says, a guy looks Russian, Nat. Are you sure he's not a mole? No, he's not a mole. No. You do kind of look Russian, but none of it is in you. Todd says, oh yeah, in my opinion, LOL. If I say that first, am I immune to make censorship laws? No.
I don't know. In some countries, yes. In Canada, I don't know about that.
Mm-hmm. And Todd says, oh God, we're screwed based on this graphic, the poll one. Again, I would love to know. And Teresa Freedom, thank you for this, says the poll was done by a liberal polling company. How many people did they poll to get those stats? Exactly. I would love to know those specific details.
Yeah, I would say if it's a liberal polling company, primarily Alberta and Calgary that was polled from.
Mm-hmm. Stephen Jensen says, depends on where and which ridings. And Todd says, I do see a lot more support for the flags I run daily, I must say. Todd says, see a lot more waves and thumbs up, and the fingers have stopped, seemingly. Well, that's good. And says, till tomorrow, probably. No, hopefully not. And Todd says, you can't forget meeting Bruce Party. He's a mesmerizing presence.
Yeah, he was absolutely fantastic. And it's one of my more favorite interviews because we went in depth into one subject, which was his constitutional proposal, which I absolutely love. But I also do realize it's one of the more risky, probably the most risky constitutional proposal because it's never been tried at that point. It offers maximum freedom, but that does come at a cost. Yeah. That would be my choice. But I think the compromise choice, I would pick the American Constitution because I definitely think it's an improvement on the Westminster system. What I don't want to see is the Westminster system. And ultimately, some of the best speakers within Alberta independence are now supporting that Westminster system, which is concerning.
Yes.
Oh, don't get angry, Matt.
Thank you so much for the $5 super chat saying companies should only be able to lease, citizens only own. I like that compromise.
Well, reread that?
That companies should only be able to lease, and citizens are the only ones that wouldn't be able to own.
Yeah, absolutely. I can agree with that. And I will also say this. There is a ton of land in Alberta. It is huge, and the amount of citizens is very small. I would not be against the government actually giving out a parcel of land to every citizen at the founding of the nation as well.
Philip Vespa says, I hope the telethon goes well. You should really see the numbers rise if it can focus on convincing undecided voters who call in.
Yeah, and I think not even just the undecided voters in that sense. If we're able to raise a lot of money for the major 7 third-party advertisers, I think that should go a long way over the next few months as well. It's unlike a lot of other, I would say, charity organizations and things like that, where you're seeing 95% of the money being paid to, what do you call it? Nat doesn't even listen to me half the time. To salaries and things like that. Most of these people aren't taking salaries, and it's all going into the cause of Alberta independence, which is a huge advantage over the Federalist side.
Yeah, I just didn't know where you were going with that. Philip Vespa says, I love the video. Stephen Jensen's video. Country rock is my thing. Yes, it's really good. And Philip Vespa also says, no, they used Derek's old picture. Where's the muscular one with a CNET jawline?
They were talking about that last night on the conference call as well.
Yeah. Philip Vespa also says, I will call Carney the greatest prime minister ever if he pushes Alberta out. I believe Alberta deserves to be free, along with Saskatchewan, Western Manitoba, and the BC interior.
Yeah, it can happen. We're well along the way. The one big hurdle that's going to lie in our path is, I believe, Danielle Smith, and she's going to try to lengthen out that timeline. I don't think everybody is necessarily aware of this yet. By the time they become aware of it, I hope it's not going to be too late, because I think after the binding referendum, if we want to set a hard date for after the non-binding referendum, if we want to set a hard date for that binding referendum, Danielle Smith is not the one that's going to see that through.
Mm-hmm. Ken Pengelli says, Danielle was at 60% early in the year, so you can see what betrayal cost her. It doesn't look good on her. And again, I do see it more in that vein, maybe, but...
Well, and again, it's not all of Alberta that decides Danielle Smith and the UCP's future. It's the members that decide that. And ultimately, Alberta Independence has an outsized say within that.
Todd says, Philip Brand didn't say he wants the Westminster system. He just said maybe. Philip Brand doesn't care what system we use as long as we get away from Ottawa.
Yeah, and I will say this, although I'm very much against the Westminster system, even pressing a reset on the Westminster system is a better situation than what we're currently in. But I'm dramatically against it. I'm having trouble talking today.
Casey Willis says, I believe the Carney numbers, the mind control virus is real, and the people don't even know that they're being manipulated. And the cognitive dissonance. Again, if you've already invested so much into being stupid, then it's harder for you to be convinced otherwise.
Well, and I will say something else we don't talk a lot about on the show are the other 9 questions. A lot of those have to do with immigration. We need to make sure we vote on that and don't take a protest vote and only vote on the one question of independence, because they will take that as a mandate from the people to absolutely flood Alberta with mass immigration, which will screw us for the second referendum, which is the binding referendum.
Mm-hmm. And Stephen Jensen says, Minster, LOL. Westminster system. Yes, I know. Believe me, I know. And over on our UMBLE, Christos says, hello, dear Alberta Independence. Let's effing go. Yes. And says, nice flag guy, finally.
Yeah, it finally came in the mail. It took a long time.
And we're finally on our UMBLE as well, because it's been struggling for the past few days. Christos says, good day, everyone. Hope you guys north of Calgary will be spared of the tornado warnings. I hope so too.
Oh, wow.
And Chris also says, Albertans for Freedom is the last third-party advertiser. This is APPs announced by Mitch on the 8th when we got together.
Yeah.
Thank you for that correction as well. Okay, now let's go into Alberta politics. There we go.
Doesn't discuss
politics. He only can Alberta's independence.
Okay, well, that took forever. Apologies for that. But let's start with Kirk Lubimov saying, quote, "It's unfortunate that instead of celebrating Calgary's stampede and its heritage, it became a pandering feast like Calgary's mayor, Jeremy Farkas, here with incoherent ramblings, saying, right now we exist in an environment where too many people and leadership are blah, blah, blah." Do you want me to just...
No, you don't need to really read the quotes because that means they're going to say it in the video usually.
Well, sometimes they don't say it.
I can just briefly acknowledge the heavy moments of time that we're currently in. Right now, we exist in an environment where too many people in leadership are inclined to scapegoat newcomers, to scapegoat immigration as the cause for challenges we have around services, infrastructure, housing, affordability. I can just briefly acknowledge.
Yeah, and I will say no to mass immigration going forward, but the fact that he's using the Calgary Stampede in this way, I guess I'm all for free speech, so go right ahead. And Alberta Independence was there representing as well. We had a much bigger crowd than most of the other event organizers there.
It's interesting. I mean, pardon my ignorance, but why is he in front of a sign that says Ismaili Muslim community's 20th something?
Well, because he's the mayor of Calgary, I believe. I think that was was that the mayor of Calgary? Yeah.
Farkas. Okay. Next. Juno News says, quote, former Liberal Member of Parliament Dan McTeague joins Chris Sims on The Fighter to break down Carney's pipeline deal and what it could mean for Canadian taxpayers.
They're saying that this is going to cost upwards of $44 billion. And get this public-private partnership, cute title, the private company is only on the hook for 10%. Translation, this is going to cost taxpayers
And the only reason a private company is even there is so that they can deny that this is a communist mechanism, and that's what he's bringing Canada to. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, I've described many times in the past how they're going to keep increasing carbon taxes, take all the profits off the top, so they're going to run the pipeline at a loss, and Alberta will probably get next to nothing. The specialty groups and classes will also get their cut right off the top, meaning there's going to be nothing left on the bottom end. And the bottom end is where Alberta is supposed to get their cut from the ultimate profits. He wants to send a message saying, you're not going to want another pipeline because we'll make sure there's no profits with the mechanisms that I've built in here.
Ton of money, like over $40 billion money. What was your take on this? Because it's frustrating because in my brain, I'm like, pipeline's good. Government getting in its own way and costing taxpayers money for no reason, bad. What was your take?
Well, this is the cost of net zero. This is why it cost $50 billion to build the Kinder Morgan Trans Mountain pipeline expansion, which was once willing to be built by Kinder Morgan at no cost to consumers. But you and I are on the hook for $50+ billion, not 33, not 34. The actual numbers are much higher than that. At a time which the federal government is running massive debts and deficits, which CTF talks about ad nauseum, it's critical that we understand and that you found that, because I had said for some time, the MOU is DOA unless the public picks up the tab. And that's exactly what you're going to do. I hope every Canadian understands they're in for tens of thousands of dollars personally. This is going to have to be paid. And sure, there's a payback and we all want pipelines. But the reason this pipeline is something that no one wants to touch is because of the net zero conditions that have been placed on it. Not just the tanker bans, decarbonization, sequestration, underground storage. This is really trying to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. And what they're doing is
and you can leave it there. And you're going to continue to see the federalization of natural resources within Canada under Mark Carney. That's how they're going to try to pay for the communist utopian dreams here.
Mm-hmm. Next, Dan Dix from Vancouver says, quote, massive class action lawsuit. CCFR sues Canadian government over firearm ban, I have to say.
Yeah, and this was brought up yesterday by, I believe, Stephen Jensen, so I went to go kind of check it out, and I still disagree with this a little bit. We can play the clip, and then I'll kind of talk about it.
The federal government of Canada has just been hit with a massive, unprecedented class action lawsuit, and this one could cost them hundreds of millions, maybe even billions. The CCFR launches unprecedented class action lawsuit. For over 6 years, the Liberal government has been waging war on law-abiding licensed firearm owners. On May 1st, 2020, they banned over 1,500 models of legally purchased guns, not the ones criminals use, the ones you bought with your hard-earned money, while following every single rule. These weren't assault weapons in the hands of criminals. These were regular Canadians' property. They stood up in front of the cameras and promised over and over again, fair compensation, we'll make it right, it's not your fault. But fast forward to today, and what do we have? A pathetic rigged buyback program designed to screw you over at every turn. A tiny pot of money that forces law-abiding citizens to compete against each other. A 2-month window, or you're out forever. And no compensation for magazines, accessories, ammo, and the taxes you already paid. And get this, you don't even know if you're getting paid or how much until you hand over your property and ship it to them. And the agreement lets them change the price or just walk away anytime they feel like it. So they want you to sign away your rights, ship them your property, and hope that the government feels like paying you pennies on the dollar, if they feel like it at all. But today, on July 14th, 2026, the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights just dropped the hammer. They've launched a class action lawsuit in Saskatchewan using the province's new amendments to the Firearms Act. This is common sense legislation that says if the government destroys the value of your legally owned property, they have to pay fair market value.
Okay,
no
and
game.
stop it there. And that's the part I kind of disagree with here. I think we should be protecting firearms at all costs, and it should be used for self-defense as well, not just for sport shooting and hunting. And demanding that the federal government just pay fair market value and they can take my weapon and that's okay, that's absolutely ridiculous. And in a free and independent Alberta, we should be protecting firearms, and we should have open or concealed carry so crimes can be prevented by citizens. So we don't have to wait an hour for the cops to actually show up. By the time that happens, people are already victims. That being said, it is a step in the right direction, I guess. At least people that have given over their firearms will get fair compensation at this point, but I also think it sets a bad precedent. We should be protecting firearm ownership, not making it illegal.
And again, what just happened in Toronto? Where were those firearms obtained? It wasn't through the legal owners that responsibly used their firearms, rather with illegal means, and they don't seem to really care about those. But while the guy comes back, I'll go into some comments and then into the last story. Todd says the Trans Mountain Pipeline is trans for sure. Yes. And Todd also says broke back Trans Mountain Pipeline. I would just say yeah. And Todd says, am I allowed to say that without in my opinion? Yes, you are. Most of the things is when you're usually the way I've seen it, or the reason why I always kind of add in his opinion or in my opinion. If anybody ever wants to go crazy or do anything weird, if you do add that before doing any kind of criticism, then you are a little bit more shielded against it, I guess. Legally, at least. And in Canada, I'm still not sure about how the defamation and all of that works. But lastly, Wall Street Apes says, quote, Portland police announced they don't have the staff to handle emergency 911 calls, and it's taking over 40 minutes to respond. A woman was forced to hold off a naked homeless man, sound familiar, Canada, trying to grab her 7-year-old without police help because they were busy.
And again, we can rethink firearms ownership within a new Alberta once we get our independence. Canada is headed in a completely different direction. And we can take examples not only from Canada with the response times, but the United States and these blue states as well. People are victims by the time the cops show up here. If we have well-armed citizens in a high-trust society, we have the ability to prevent a lot of this.
Well, this is another event we've reported on where bystander intervention has prevented what could have been a much more serious crime. And today police are saying that it shouldn't come down to heroic actions by citizens.
We don't have the appropriate amount of police officers to handle the amount of demand for police services.
This statement from Portland Police has been made evident the past several days. On Saturday, it took officers an estimated 30 to 40 minutes to respond to a dozen 911 calls reporting a naked man harassing people in Waterfront Park. This escalated to an alleged attempt to grab a 7-year-old girl out of her parents' arms. The Bureau says its officers were tied up with a barricaded suspect a mile away.
They're resource intensive, and so when you have a draw like that, it really puts a drain on the entire city, not just that precinct.
But this wasn't an isolated incident.
We're going to keep going through this, but it puts a draw on the system so police can't show up, so it's going to take longer. Yeah, okay, I can even understand that to a certain point, but what's the solution to that? Is it going to be more cops? Because if more situations happen, it's still going to take time. I think building a high-trust society, number one, so we can trust people to have firearms, so we can prevent crimes before people become victims. Also, firearms are the great equalizer if a woman is going to get robbed or something worse. horse by a man or something like that.
But also Portland was one of those cities, especially with the mayor and with everybody else in government apparently, supporting BLM, Black Lives Matter, ACAP, getting rid of cops, and the calls to actually get rid of cops, where a lot of cops did actually either move or quit or go elsewhere because they weren't wanted and because they weren't allowed to do their jobs at the time. And now we're seeing and suffering the consequences of listening to inane, idiot, insane activists and the few minority that were actually asking for this, because most of the people that live more rurally within Portland and Oregon and elsewhere, Washington as well, where they have the crazy cities and the crazy activists in there actually making the government take decisions for the rest of the, I was going to say province, for the rest of the state as well.
Yeah. Oh, we can go on to the next post there.
That was it.
Oh, okay, let's go into some comments if we can.
Well, it's because you left in the middle of, well, we were in the middle of two things. Let me go into the comments back again. I have to figure out which ones I've read and which ones I haven't. Casey Willis, hello, says, I believe Smith's numbers should be lower, but for now, she is a default vote.
Well, no, I think she's very, very popular with inside of Alberta. But I think
outside.
I think with inside of Alberta Independence, we've woken up to her, and the veil has been taken off. And we're the ones that decide with the UCP, with the memberships and buying tickets for the actual event where we can have a vote to oust her and get somebody in there that will be competent to make sure there is a binding referendum for Alberta independence. And this is really important because she's just going to keep extending this thing out like she's kind of said in other interviews, whether it's having consultations or consulting the federal government on multiple other things. One of those things being, what percentage do you actually need? It's 50+1. And if the fact that she doesn't know that at this point is absolutely ridiculous.
But I also think nationally, of course, yes, but also locally within Alberta, some people that are forever Canadians or that are want Alberta to stay, especially in the national side. But even within Alberta, we can't forget that there are some forever Canadians that are conservative.
No, I wouldn't say that at all. What I would say is,
because I've seen them commenting.
Yeah, I mean, we report on Alberta every day. It's very obvious the Conservatives are split within Alberta. You have a large section of Conservatives that aren't forever Canadians. They're actual national Conservatives that follow Pierre Poilievre, and that's where she's getting the majority of her support. When I watch interviews of these people, of UCP politicians as well, they just absolutely love Danielle Smith. They would have nobody else other than her. It's Alberta Independence that has woken up to her and realized that she has her sights set on Ottawa, not Alberta, and she's training Alberta's sovereignty and economic sovereignty specifically for
what?
Yeah, you can go on.
And
I lost my train of thought there.
Thank you so much for the $10 super chat saying we can for the firearms have those who carry to have regular number of hours of range practice like Israel.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, encourage a healthy firearm owning culture.
Yeah, we need a high trust society for that. And this is why we need no mass immigration. If we're going to have immigration, it has to be in extremely limited numbers so those people can get adopted to the customs, the morals, and the foundation and the values of that society.
But I also think it goes hand in hand because with a healthy firearm culture, you get a more high trust society. And with a high trust society, you can have a healthy firearm culture. So I think both things go hand in hand as well. Okay. Hold on, where were we? Sean, hello Sean. It's like I said Oregon and you appeared because he said, did someone say Oregon? Yes, we did. We were thinking of you the whole time. Stephen Jensen says, same in Jasper Park Fire too. Todd says, seen a before and after a brush cut has been through round a cabin in Nordegg. Big difference in ground cover. I think they're talking about fire. Todd says she was selling Alberta's economic sovereignty for these MOUs and pipelines. I was looking for the word MOU and my brain broke there for a minute. That was from a few minutes ago. Okay.
Now you look confused.
I
was still looking for.
This is why he shouldn't work out every day. He's been going to run every day, and now he's
going well.
Half brain. Todd says they had. Now I am. They had to do their forest clean around their property. No one gonna do it properly for them. Thank you. Sean says, Nat, you missed out on the Fenty lady at Target a couple nights back. She walked normal, but her torso was completely horizontal, and I'm not joking, like a horror movie. Yeah, I don't miss seeing that in Vancouver either. Or having to guess if someone on the sidewalk is alive or dead.
Yeah, it's very rare here in Mexico. I see an actual crazy person on the street, but I actually seen one today. So
You did?
yeah, when I was walking back from the park.
Oh, crazy, like crazy?
Yeah,
Or
he tried
homeless?
No, he was crazy, and he was trying to say something to me after, but I didn't understand what he said because I don't speak Spanish. So
And because probably it was crazy person. Stephen, but did he look homeless?
yeah, he was homeless and he was crazy.
Well, it could be a crazy non-homeless person. Stephen Jensen says, Fenty zombies, I'm going to have to say horizontal is normal, unfortunately. Sean, thank you so much for the 199 super chat saying
thank you.
Alberta should model after Israel, Canada invaders. Todd says, we're working on getting her out of our party and replacing her with someone who stands for Alberta sovereignty.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also have to realize, I know the big knock against having the leadership review on Danielle Smith is this will lead way to Ninchi. Not if we have a strong candidate. We need to start looking for those candidates now that conservatives that aren't in support of independence will vote for as well. And I think there are those candidates out there. I think Keith Wilson is probably the primary candidate. The big question mark is, would he actually do it?
Philip Espa says, I would go to the stampede for cowboys riding bulls, not Sikhs waving swords. Assimilation should be the #1 priority for an independent Alberta.
Absolutely. And immigration works on a low level where you're trying to really assimilate these people into a society. And that's what Canada used to have.
Todd says, where the F is all the people that need to watch this live at 5? Our live.
There's also another thing I want to say about immigration, and it's not even, obviously mass immigration is a complete failure, but even limited immigration I think needs to stop at this point. We need to figure out how to fix the society with zero immigration. Once we fix all the metrics with the people that we have, then we can talk about how we want to do immigration at that point.
Mm-hmm. And Kent Pengelly says, says, I think if it's, say, over 100 acres, you should need a reason to own that much. Obviously, that isn't for personal use. We need to pass a law like Texas, making it illegal for state-run companies to own. Again, I like that. And that's the thing. I think it has to be a compromise, and I don't want to put that much trust, especially regarding private property, within the government itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Alberta has a ton of natural resources, has an extremely low population, it has a lot of land. I'm not against giving a parcel of land out to every single citizen at the founding of the country, #1, and having a reserve of land that we can give out that will be for new citizens in the future, whether it's born citizens to Albertan parents or however we're going to decide it. The best parcels of land should be given out at the founding of the country, I would think. And then the land that's kept in reserve would be further out from the cities, I guess.
Canadian Spider-Man, hello, says, hello, Nat and Guy from the patio of the Big Eddie pub in Revelstoke, BC. I like Revelstoke. Says, broken down, but having fun listening to you, and raising a glass to you both. Thank you so much. And hopefully, I'm guessing broke, that means like his motorcycle broke. I know Canadian Spider-Man has been riding. Okay. Hopefully you can fix it.
I always would have problems with my battery on my motorcycle.
Yes. He made me go to Canadian Tire like 20 times to go pick up a new one.
I had this beautiful 16cc Harley, but it was custom built, and the battery and wiring the guy used on it wasn't the greatest. And man, yeah. But the battery is very often a problem on a lot of motorcycles.
Philip Vespa says, you cannot put a price on firearm confiscation. Even the hardest economic libertarians don't agree with fair market buybacks.
Yeah, absolutely not. And this is the scam I think they're trying to pull in Saskatchewan, and they want to see how it's going to work out. If we create laws saying we're going to protect your guns and the government's going to have to buy it back at fair market value, are the people going to resist that or think that the provincial government is doing a favor because they're getting fair market value? No, they're not doing you a favor. They should not be confiscating guns in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Philip Vespa says, in Ontario, we had a wildfire smoke that made it look apocalyptic. The wildfires near Thunder Bay happened because the federal government does not have an effective tree clearing strategy. Exactly, and the same in BC, same elsewhere.
#1, tree clearing strategy, but also controlled burns. Everybody knows that's the way that it's done. And for basic forest maintenance. The federal government absolutely loves these forest fires. This is something that they put up as talking points every time they want billions of dollars for green energy things. They're always talking about forest fires in Canada, yet they do zero to manage those forest fires.
Pete says,
other than dump glyphosate on the forest en masse, which exacerbate the forest fires. Yes. I know once you start reading, you get angry if I interrupt.
Because you always get angry when I say one thing or a comment that's supposed to go with whatever you're saying.
Come on, the people don't want to hear you complain.
Me. Pete says, whose cops? The serve and protect kind or the vote Liberal no matter what kind? Hopefully the serve and protect ones. And says, I'm sure it must be horrible AF to be a conservative cop. God bless. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
it's becoming less and less these days. I used to train a lot of police officers when I was living in Vancouver, and the testing they have, the lie detector test, the type of questions they ask, the check boxes you actually have to get through in order to be a police officer now. The conservative cops are really a dying breed, and it's people that were in the police force before. They're really trying to avoid hiring new conservative police officers in Canada, and it's absolutely ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. But now let's actually go into, now I lost that one comment. Okay, now let's go into Alberta Personalities, and then I'll continue reading your comments because I did see quite a few come in.
But they need to understand that Albertans are done, we're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
Let's start with Jasmine Lane, if I can center her properly. There we go. Jasmine Lane says, some people in Canada are confusing patriotism with memory loss. And I haven't seen it, but I think I'm probably going to agree with her.
Yeah, and Alberta hasn't forgot. We're not going to forget. We're never going to forget. And that's why we're actually doing something, and it's called Alberta Independence. Well, the rest of Canada just sits there and takes it. Alberta says, we will take it no more. You've crossed every line. We're going to go, and we're going to take Alberta with us.
Isn't it kind of funny how the very same people who currently blame Donald Trump for Canada's economic woes are also the same people who fully supported Justin Trudeau resigning based on his economic record and the trajectory, which has not been addressed or fixed in the slightest. And then Justin Trudeau's financial advisor, Mark Carney, comes in and he's like, hey, everybody, forget about all of those economic problems that predated Donald Trump. We're going to blame him anyway. And a good chunk of the Canadian population was like, yeah, team forget. We love forgetting, elbows up. And then it gets worse because after he successfully won the election based on a total misrepresentation of what was actually going on here, he then had to very quietly admit that actually, thanks to USMCA, about 85% of our business is all tariff-free, our trade is tariff-free. And the Canadian public was still like, yeah, but it's Trump's fault, though. And then when business owners were like, actually, it's your regulatory environment, the fact that policies change like every 6 months, you have really high taxes. And the Canadian public was like, yeah, but it's still Trump's fault, though. And then when you were like, okay, so let's just entertain that for a second. Did you know that, in fact, like the majority of ridings that are most heavily affected by tariffs that were not protected by USMCA voted conservative? So like, if you actually care about tariffs, why didn't you want to listen to them? Because they obviously know, and the Canadian public was like, no, it's Trump's fault, you maggot, you far-right radical. And here's the thing, you don't have to like Donald Trump, right? But at the end of the day, Canada being the only G7 nation that's in a recession right now, considering the fact that we actually have mostly tariff-free trade with the United States of America as per our own government sourcing, I think it's at least fair to wonder if perhaps the very same economic reasons why Justin Trudeau had to step down might still be in effect today. While the government and media...
And you can leave it there. And I will say this, we got a fantastic clip coming up tomorrow where Vashi was talking to Mark Carney, and she said, well, why should we think that you can make a difference when you have all the same people on there? And Carney's answer was, well, I'm different. But I wish she would have followed it up, and obviously she wasn't. But he is the same because he was the economic advisor. So all the people are the same. Why do you think you're going to get a different result? Most likely you're going to get even a worse result because the economic advisor is the one that drove Canada off the cliff in the first place.
I'm still waiting for whenever we're able to judge him on grocery prices, but I guess not yet. Pierre Poilievre, another discussion.
Well, and again, right there, I will say that Alberta hasn't forgotten, and that's why Alberta Independence is going strong right now. All of the rest of Canada seems to be holding hands and singing Kumbaya together. It's absolutely ridiculous at this point what they've done over the last decade. It's time to make a change.
Well, hold on. Yes, it is. But Karen Whitelock, thank you. Hello, and thank you so much for the $10 super chat saying, according to Canadian Bay Alliance in 2025, 2,000 people passed away in car accidents versus fewer than 1,000 firearms, including pew-pew, people that take their own lives and accidents.
Yeah, and we can just go into the MAID numbers on top of that. That would be absolutely ridiculous. And now they're trying to hide the MAID numbers. I think it starts next year. They don't want to report them as MAID deaths because there's such an uproar in the international press.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, and thank you for the stat as well. And again, for the just highlighting how insane it continues to be, and that their talking points continue to also be thwarted by things like what happened this past weekend in Toronto.
Before mass immigration, you had one of the highest trust societies in the world in Canada. Why they didn't have open carry firearms ownership is beyond me. This is how you prevent crime.
But thank you, Karen. Again, as I was saying, another disappointment, but PP says the liberal quote-unquote justice system, they broke it, signed us to help fix it.
Stole so many things that I had in my car, opened my garage from the garage door openers, stole a bunch of things from my garage, power tools, scooters, whatever. And then he found keys, so he thought they were the keys to my house. Yeah. So then he's trying to break into my house. And then you could see he's so happy when he found the keys. He'll have cameras all over my house. But then he couldn't get in and have his lights that came on. So then they left with all this stuff. Yeah. So I sent the footage to the police. Police saw the footage, were able to identify two of the guys. They caught him, let him go. He goes and steals a car, smashes it into a wall. And then they let him go again.
Of course they did. Yeah. This is the way it works. Yeah. The liberal justice system does.
Like at this point, why should we be even surprised about stories like this?
Well, and what changes is he going to be able to make? What's he going to do is probably bring in harsher sentencing, maybe, and then what else can he actually do? And in free and independent Alberta, we can liberalize firearm ownership and firearm licensing. So if we can build a high trust society again, when criminals know that if they break into a home, somebody can defend themselves with their firearm, that is a huge preventative measure. You don't become a victim at that point. You don't have to wait for the police an hour to come to your house, especially if you live rurally. It could take a couple hours for a police officer to get out there.
But again, as I think I quote this almost every show, as Nayib Bukele also said in El Salvador, if you don't get rid of the corrupt judges, then you can't actually start to implement change. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the catch and release system in Canada, where do we point to? I mean, yes, a bunch of different people, but in the end, in the last instance, the injustice system. Speaking of the injustice system and representing Canadians very well abroad, as we continue to do, Clown World says, quote, a 33-year-old Canadian woman on the Jersey Shore boardwalk, repeatedly confronted and then slapped a teenage girl for wearing sweatpants that said Trump and ICE. She fled the scene but was identified through surveillance footage and turned herself in on July 13, charged with simple assault, endangering the welfare of a child, harassment, and obstruction. She is now in ICE custody, ironically enough, and her husband is publicly pleading for her release.
Yeah, I was watching the video and I should have grabbed it of her husband crying in the car saying, oh, I don't know how we're going to free her, this and that, basically pleading to liberals in the States to send them money. Absolutely ridiculous. I hope Trump throws the absolute book at this girl and doesn't just deport her to Canada, but throws her in jail to set an example of this. We've seen where other cases go a lot farther than this and real violence is happening. In these smaller cases, he's going to need to throw the book at her.
Mm-hmm. And again, great representation for Canadians all everywhere.
Well, why are they even going to the States? You're going to see people in MAGA hats. If they don't agree with that, maybe don't go to the States.
I thought the States was very dangerous for Canadians, according to mainstream news. Okay, but now let's go back to your comments and then into Alberta's Canada. I forgot which one. Sean says, Stephen, why do they do that? Seriously, I want to know. It's disturbing. Sean says, Mexico should have had a law like that. Like what?
What was that? Wow.
Yeah. We were both half brain today. Between us, we.
Well, no, I just don't remember what story he's actually talking about because it was a while ago.
Me either. Hold on. Stephen Jensen says, "Gotta love arson season." Again, I mean, the liberals do because they can use it as further propaganda year after year after year.
Yeah.
And again, they increase the temperatures, the color of temperatures, even within mainstream media when they talk about weather, just to scare. And then, as you always say, they change where they actually measure and get measurements for how hot it is.
It would not surprise me if the government was involved in a lot of these man-made forest fires. One of the first things that we reported on the channel was somebody that was fishing in a very remote river, went upriver, and there was a police officers, so with two guys in hazmat suits, literally dumping these barrels of poison into the river. He asked what they were doing. They told him to leave. He filmed the entire thing. And then the scandal ended up coming out later that they were trying to kill an invasive species of fish with chemicals. But what they were doing were killing all the fish in the river with the chemicals.
Mm-hmm. And next, Smile to Life Everyday Hello says to Stephen Jensen, they wanted to thank you for the signs that you gave my husband today.
Oh, fantastic.
That's cute. And Sean says, Guy, I used to train cops on the Constitution for Sacramento County. You two could do like a buddy cop training thing. And
the amount that cops don't know and they think one thing's the law and it's not is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Sean says, the left and hypocrisy need to get married because they're in love with each other. Well, yeah. One thing leads from the other as well.
Yeah, one thing I'm not for with police officers or policing are quotas. And in the United States, there's a lot of quotas where you have to have a certain number of traffic tickets or a certain number of arrests for certain offenses. I'm not a big fan of those kind of policies and that kind of law enforcement.
Sean says, and this was a thing about Jasmine Lane says, is that what girls in Alberta look like? Count me in. She's in Ontario, isn't she?
No, I thought she's from Winnipeg.
Or yeah, but not in Alberta. But I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Sean says Quebecois need their own leftist utopia. Yes. And says, look at that septum ring. And again, you can always tell, which is funny. You can always they're easily identifiable by their own stupidity. Casey Willis says, if we lose a question, might as well have Nenshi. It's a lost cause.
Yeah, we have to take the risk no matter what to have a leadership review on Danielle Smith. That at least allows Danielle Smith to know that we will challenge her and we're not happy with her and that she better have a binding referendum or we're going to do it again. And we're going to do it again right the next time, and we'll keep buying up memberships. Either which way, she's likely to put a binding referendum on there. The thing is, if we don't challenge her, she's going to extend that timeline out, thinking she has control of the situation, and we're not going to see a binding referendum for years at that point.
Canadian Spider-Man says, I'm not insane enough to ride a motorcycle with Canadian drivers. Mexico, perhaps in Jalisco. My RV is broken down here, but there is hope. Okay.
The roads are really bad in Mexico. I wouldn't want to drive a Harley here or any kind of motorcycle.
No. Hold on. Canadian Spider-Man says, I will make it to Alberta in time for the vote if I have to walk from Revelstoke. Good. And you have time. You have a few months still. But it would take about that much to walk.
No.
How much would it take to walk from Revelstoke, BC to Alberta?
I don't know, but we did do the March Across Canada with, oh God, what was his name again?
I always forget.
There was a gentleman that did a walk across Canada. We did the first little leg of the journey within BC and reported on the story. And then we caught back up to him in hope and re-reported on the story. But yeah, he managed to walk across all of Canada. That was an amazing feat. And I was glad to see, that was James Topp.
James Topp.
And the amount of people that met him in Ottawa was absolutely fantastic. Mm-hmm. I wish he would have kept a higher profile after that, but he kind of...
he didn't want to.
Yeah, he didn't want to.
Philip Vespa says, you can't fix the justice system, PP. It is designed to break on its own via the Constitution. Please, I beg Albertans to vote option 2 on the 19th.
Yeah, I think we're all really hoping that this thing turns out because the Conservatives aren't going to be able to save Canada at this point. The judiciary is completely corrupt. The system itself is rotten to the core. We need to hit the reset button. Even if we take the worst option of the Westminster system, it's better than where we're at today. But we have multiple other options for other constitutions, whether it's the American Constitution or whether it's Bruce Party's proposal as well.
Speaking of all of that, let's go to Alberta's Canada. Let's start with this from the Globe and Mail saying, quote, help wanted, the federal Conservatives are in need of an adult.
Yeah, I actually need you to open this article. I started reading this article and it was shocking. Now there's a big middle portion that's a bunch of jargon. They're not really saying much, but what they're proposing in here, I just thought was absolutely ludicrous. And this just shows the extent or the narrative that the mainstream media has been able to pitch within Canada because the rest of the world has, I think, woken up.
This is from the Globe. I'll read it, but we won't be able to fully see it. It's from the Globe and Mail. It says, help wanted, the federal Conservatives are in need of an adult. And it says, Conservative MP Dean Allison called the news conference last week to give the media an update on his inquiry into the COVID-19 Jibby jab. If you're like me, you're probably thinking that's an inquiry into the COVID 19 jibby jab. Why? Mr. Allison was accompanied by a couple of supporters.
Okay, and you can jump ahead because he's just going to talk about the press conference, but then go to where he just talks. Keep going down.
I think it's here.
Okay.
Yeah. And maybe the Conservatives need to understand that wasting the public's time on senseless overtures like this is why, in part, they find themselves in the predicament they do now. So far down in the political doldrums, it would take the James Webb telescope to make out even the faintest signs of a party ready to lead. I mean, a COVID jibby jab inquiry, what's next? A probe into who ended the Canadian penny, an examination of whether the earth could be flat, contrary to reports. Even diehard Conservatives are miserable and dejected by the current state of affairs.
Okay, and you can leave it there. The fact that they're trying to compare what happened during COVID to flat Earth is absolutely ridiculous. The data is now on the side of the people that didn't take those jabs and the other people that have woken up to the amount of people that have been injured from this thing.
But it also just goes to further prove that, I mean, in a way, I do agree the Conservative Party is in the doldrums and in dire need of something to happen. But obviously, the plan and what most people are now looking for, most conservative, quote unquote, Canadians are looking for, is just moving further and further towards the left.
The thing they needed to happen was Alberta independence, and they could have used this thing. Danielle Smith was using it to her advantage in a big way, and then she turned her back on it because Mark Carney tapped her on the shoulder and offered a couple of fantasy pipelines.
But now let's look at he who must not be named. Marty up north says he reversed 2 generations of progress in Canada, and now he's living his best life.
Well, he's preparing for his new job as the Easter Bunny, I guess, here.
Yeah. I have to not get copyrighted for the music, but yeah, I mean, that's how he left Canada, and now he just gets
Well, that's not how he left Canada. That was from the Katy Perry music video I think he was performing in the other day.
But what they're showing in the background. Yeah. Essentially. Basically. I hope YouTube doesn't get angry by one of those that showed up, but yeah.
Okay.
And again, I mean, we'll never see accountability. And I think one of the good ways to actually try to find some kind of accountability is for Alberta to become independent and become that mirror image to what Canada will continue to decline into.
I would maybe this is a radical idea, but I'm all for Alberta not only getting its independence, but prosecuting the people during that era, like Justin Trudeau. We might not get prosecutions off of it or convictions off of it because they won't show up in Alberta, but it's one way to keep a lot of these people out of Alberta and not have Justin Trudeau showing up or Mark Carney showing up thinking everything's hunky-dory. It's not hunky-dory, and it hasn't been hunky-dory for a long time. You destroyed the country and you brought Alberta independence upon yourself here.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I was mid-sip. But now let's go to the Elevate report. Says this was a crucial pivot in my debate with Harrison. He makes the point that Canada could trade Chinese dumping for American dumping and cede sovereignty to the U.S.
Yeah, and I'll say I'm a big fan of Harrison Faulkner. I like him even though he's a nationalist, but I will say the Conservatives are starting to put their elbows up too, and I don't even think they know it. They're really starting to align on a lot of different talking points with the Liberals.
And if
shoe horse theory.
Canada is to make a deal in which we cede access to our markets, which we trade Chinese dumping for American dumping in some of these markets, or even worse, we cede sovereignty control, then that would not be good for Canada either.
So there's a couple things to bring up there that I don't even think any of which has ever been talked about or even anyone's ever even alluded to. Has America been caught guilty of dumping into our industries? I might be unaware of that.
No, not that I can tell, but part of the reason why, for example, the Canadian government justifies, and there's plenty of debate to be had on this, but part of the reason why Canada justifies some of its protectionist measures, whether it's dairy or in other industries, is to prevent the much larger and much more powerful American industries.
Let's protect the dairy cartels. Let's protect the Canadian monopolies. Absolutely ridiculous. Let them fall. Open up the market. This will at first give cheap prices to Canadian citizens, which would be absolutely fantastic. Yes, I understand the American companies will come in at first and dominate the markets, but the natural resources and a lot of the oil that comes out of the ground comes out in Canada so you don't have to ship that anywhere. You'll be able to make the manufacturing if you take down all the regulations. What this will cause is massive regulations to come down in Canada if they want to compete with American companies. Canada doesn't want to do that because they make a lot of money and they consolidate a lot of power through their regulations. I think Alberta needs to have a zero tariff policy with the United States. This is something Donald Trump has talked about with the rest of Canada and what he originally wanted. Canadians just aren't willing to do it because it would be a huge adjustment. Alberta has the Rocky Mountains running through it. It has a ton of mining materials coming out of the ground. It has a ton of oil and natural gas as well. It costs money to ship all that. That's an additional input. You could create all the manufacturing you want in Alberta once it's free. And I think a zero tariff policy with the United States would bring cheap products in the beginning and make us compete on a real scale that we would have global dominance on eventually.
Do you want me to keep playing?
Yeah.
Okay.
From coming in and dominating Canadians in those spaces. That's the justification for the supply management, for example. Now, I'm not a cheerleader for supply management, but that's the justification. And if we're going to make a deal that benefits the U.S. and we cede control, for example, over some of these issues, I would be shocked if people aren't worried about American companies going in and dominating some of these industries in Canada.
Yeah,
We're
I think
much smaller, and that's the justification that Canada has always had since the beginning of our country, since Confederation, to protect our industries. Because whether we like it or not, we are up against a behemoth.
Why can't you compete with Americans? Because if you take down these tariffs and American companies come in, that's going to result in the only way to compete is for the federal government to take down the regulations. If the federal government takes down the regulations, Canada actually has a huge advantage. They're not going to be willing to do that, and they're not going to be willing to take down the tariffs either. Harrison Faulkner, I like him, but he also said when he was talking about Alberta independence that he's seen Alberta as his inheritance. It's not any Canadian's inheritance. Alberta belongs to Albertans, and they're going to vote on that when they vote on independence on October 19th.
Mm-hmm. Do I keep playing?
Yeah, continue. Okay. So this clip really got under my skin a lot, and it's not that I don't like Harrison, but it's an argument that's coming up with a lot of national conservatives saying what Mark Carney's doing is the right thing, and I don't think it is.
And so there needs to be some attention paid to protecting Canadian industries that are much smaller than the United States. That's why we've maintained that position since McDonald.
But I think that's my point there is, yeah, like I agree. Like there's a reason why we have tariffs in place on them is, again, to protect those industries. I do have some questions though. And I get, I do see your point where there are, this goes way back in terms of our relationship with the United States, but to make the assumption that America is going to start dumping their goods into our country and we're going to cede sovereignty are two things I've never even heard as a possibility between our two countries before. But you brought up in this as a potential threat. And I think that seems to be kind of an elbows up perspective of the America's just going to dominate and take us over.
Well, on sovereignty, let's talk about that. Obviously, the president and his 51st state remarks is a complete,
Now he wants to talk about sovereignty. Sovereignty. What about the sovereignty of Alberta? This is a nationalist trying to talk about Canada's sovereignty, but when Alberta wants to be sovereign, no, you have to stay in Canada. Absolutely ridiculous. I didn't actually watch the entire clip, so let's see what he says after this point.
But I'll also say just quickly, we do know why, for example, communist and socialist policies fail when they're very restrictionist and they don't allow their own industries to compete on the actual open market. And they end up having to just deal internally, actually take a step back and not be able to improve. That was the word I was looking for. I was thinking that in Spanish. I don't know why.
Political football, and you can perceive them in many different ways. I think taking the president seriously, but not literally, as people have written about and alluded to, is an important perspective. And the 51st state comments are a joke and funny for some. You mentioned in your episode that people cried about the 51st state. I think, again, it's on principle. Forget who the president is as an individual. The idea of the 51st state stuff is on principle. And opposing it, I oppose it on principle. Now, on sovereignty more broadly, I asked the ambassador about the Northwest Passage. This is a really important issue that nobody really talks about, and I don't think the ambassador has been asked about the Northwest Passage until I brought it up to him. But the U.S. believes that.
And I don't think he knows about the Northwest Passage because The Chinese are calling it international waters, and they're putting their ships through there. And then when Canada says that's Canada's waters, they say, no, it's international waters. And then they just keep doing it. The Americans don't do the same. The Americans will say it's international waters, but they respect the space and don't put their ships through there.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, just a pause. Stephen Jensen, thank you so much for the $2 super chat saying tariffs, taxes, regulations, all Canadian socialism.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what I was trying to say. And again, thinking that and imposing more governmental regulation, even to try to save your industries, is not allowing your industries to actually compete on the real open market and to actually improve themselves when having to compete with better U.S. ones, for example.
Yeah.
But because we're scared of the U.S. and we always want to have this defeatist victimhood attitude, even within our economic policies, well, we'll continue to be that. And that is why we are at this point.
Because it's a two-step process. You don't just have to take down regulations as Canada. If you take down tariffs, you're going to have to take down all the regulations as well in order to compete on the open market. And Canada just isn't willing to do that second part. Hell, they're not even willing to do the first part at this point. And man, he is sounding a lot like Mark Carney. And this is somebody I like and I watch a lot of. But
again, it's that horseshoe theory. It's that this is the reason why the Conservative Party is in the doldrums, because they're starting to move further and further away from any sort of principle because they just continue losing. And it's, again, the same defeatist attitude that now both, apparently, the Liberals and the Conservatives share in Canada.
There's a plot to oust Pierre Poilievre as well. And Pierre Poilievre doesn't create that complete horseshoe. But if they get rid of Poilievre, it will be a complete horseshoe for the world to see uniparty standing for Canada at that point if a Doug Ford or a Jason Kenney takes over. I mean, a lot of conservatives, the fact that conservatives are already talking like this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, play a little bit more, I guess.
It is an international strait. They've made it very clear in their new national security strategy that under the what is described as a Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, they will expand their access in strategically important locations in the Western Hemisphere. This is a perfect example why Canada maintains some of the positions that it does. Because the United States seeks to challenge our territorial claims to our own internal water on the Northwest Passage. The Canadian government, likewise, on trade, maintains protection over some of these industries. If I choose to take the issue regarding Northwest Passage and Arctic sovereignty seriously, maybe others don't want to. Maybe that's described as elbows up, but I don't see it as being elbows.
How are you taking it seriously? Literally, the Americans are saying they're looking at the Western Hemisphere, but they're not running ships through there. The Chinese are literally running ships through Canadian territory, yet he's not saying anything about that, number one. And the Americans could stop that if they could ask for their help. Canada is incompetent right now and not able to actually protect the Northwest Passage and stop Chinese ships from using that shipping lane. You can leave it there, sorry.
But again, it's the same. Well, it's not fair that the U.S. is able to do that because they're doing so much better. So we have to do something to protect ourselves because, big bad meanie, the U.S.
The U.S. isn't
Instead
actually...
of trying to improve and trying to actually get on the level of the U.S., you have to complain all the time.
But the U.S. isn't actually doing anything right now. Well, China is.
No, but with industries,
and that's the point.
With the industries, I mean. But a similar argument as well that he was giving there for sovereignty in the Northwest Passage. Yes, let's go to comments. Hold on. Where are we?
And I'll say the next section is out in Alberta and the world, and the last story on there is actually shocking, but it has to do with mass immigration.
Sean asks, what is SC? Okay, Sean asks, Nat, how big of a SC for you to, super chat. Okay, Nat, how big of a super chat for you to sport a septum ring? Well, if a lot of you don't know, I actually was super woke when then I made the kind of 180 turn when I realized I still had a brain inside of me. I actually had a septum ring, and I don't think the hole is open still, but it was years ago. I think the hole is already closed, but I had one for years, for like 3 or 4 years. Around you met me with a septum ring.
Yeah, but I wouldn't date you if that.
You dated me
time,
when I had a septum ring.
Yeah, no, but I didn't date you when you were liberal.
No. Exactly. So, I mean, I wouldn't be open the whole though. Steven Jensen says, Steven Jensen, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Says, U.S. gives Canada the courtesy of letting us know when they're going to go through the passage. China does not do the same.
Exactly. And America will help you protect that passage from countries like China and Russia. Right now, it's just China disrespecting you, and you can't do anything about it. You need to be able to defend your territory. The fact that he's not complaining about China is upsetting, and I see the same arguments. It's not just him. It's a lot of conservatives now, and there's starting to be this horseshoe theory with conservatives and this new Mark Carney that now that he's going towards natural resources on a national level, not inside of Alberta as much.
Rafa, hello Rafa, says, hello, good evening. Oh, I need to reply to your email. Apologies. I'll do that today. Thank you for being here and reminding me. Todd says, I think Jasmine Lane's blood family lives in Alberta.
Oh, fantastic.
So there might be some hope. Hold on.
I think she's having a ton of success right now, and it's a touchy topic for her to touch. But she points out all the wrongs with the federal government, so ultimately it does help Alberta tangentially.
Sean says, all conservatives will live in Alberta. That's why conservatives are so scared of losing it. Exactly. The Conservative Party.
Well, and that's why when this binding referendum comes, and we need to make sure it comes in a quick fashion, we're going to see national conservatives flood into Alberta to make sure they can vote.
Sean says, just make sure Alberta doesn't join the ICC. And Sean says, hey, Ottawa needs to keep their milk in those stupid large plastic bags.
Yeah.
That only happens in some provinces, but yeah. In BC, it doesn't, so I did find it still very weird. Sean says, sure sounds like do it as cheerleading. Maybe Canada shouldn't be a country then if the only way is to drive up prices on its citizens to keep its sovereignty.
Yeah.
Again, socialism, communism.
Well, and then it wants to trap, every province in.
But,
we're going to be talking about him tomorrow, and I think
we
Derek the Fringe actually called them out. I agree with Derek on that one, though.
I don't even know what you're talking about. But Sean says, I agree with JJ McCall, a YouTuber dude, that there is a North American culture. There really isn't much of a unique Canadian culture outside American culture. It's really just one with some tiny differences.
Yeah, sometimes I agree with JJ and sometimes I don't agree with him, but tomorrow I'm not going to agree with him. But it's not about that particular issue there.
But do you agree with this?
I'll read it again.
That there is a unique American culture, but not a unique Canadian culture. Canadian culture is essentially just based off of the U.S.
Now it is. Now it's gone. Like they've erased it. They've erased the statues, they erased the names, they erased the history, and they're calling it evil, and nobody wants to really lean into what Canada was once upon a time.
Stephen Jensen says, I remember him, I'm guessing Harrison, whining when he interviewed Keith Wilson. LOL. Todd says, I used to watch Harrison before his stance on independence, unsubscribed from him.
Yeah, I gave him a lot of breathing room, but this clip here pissed me off quite a bit.
This was not a good look. Sean says Canada can't defend it. That's why the
USA... It goes further than even I think a Doug Ford or a Jason Kenney. It's literally conservative elbows up, and if other conservative, he's got a huge influence in with national conservatives across Canada, not Alberta. I would not be surprised if national conservatives start to have an elbows up attitude as well.
Well, again, it's that same attitude of, oh, we can't compete, we can't do this, we can't do that, and it's not fair that the U.S. is so much better than us. Get better instead of complaining.
Well, a lot of those policies he was talking about, Mark Carney's actually talking about, and if they manage to oust a Pierre Poilievre, you'll see a lot of national conservatives maybe start to vote for Carney, which would be absolutely insane. I mean, Alberta needs its independence now before this uniparty comes out in the open.
Sean says Canada can't defend it. That's why the USA wants to control it. What a moron. And Sean also says if you view China and the USA as the same, then you're the problem. Yes, but I will say again now a lot seem, not just the Liberals, but some conservatives as well seem to be thinking that China actually is a place that we should look at as an example of things to do. Which is what it's starting to sound very similar to that.
Well, and he's starting to sell the EU as well, and a lot of the policies Harrison was actually talking about there were EU-style policies and EU arguments. This is why I think it's so dangerous to this horseshoe theory of politics in Canada with the uniparty, and then creeping closer and closer to the EU. I do not want to be part of the EU. The EU has lost its freedoms, has ceded Western values, has lost all moral, and I don't want
it's controlled by an unelected cabal called the
Alberta
European
needs
Union.
out now before they try to hook their wagon to the EU.
Mm-hmm. Philip Vespa says the The Jersey Shore incident, Septum Ring Lady, proves that Canada is a national security threat to the U.S. and it justifies any form of sanctions on Canadian officials.
Yeah.
And it's not the first time the U.S. has actually seriously started to think about that, especially because, and I do have a video releasing now tomorrow, it was supposed to come out yesterday, about the Canadian passport and how it's losing prestige, and especially within the U.S. because of several different incidents, but also because of how Canada has mismanaged its own border and who it lets in and how it doesn't do background checks that the U.S. would need. Well, now the U.S. is looking with suspicion at Canada and at the people that they let in with a Canadian passport.
Well, and we do have a story tomorrow about the amount of people on Terry watch lists that have been coming through the Canadian border now that the Mexican border is so secure. And we showed that article, I think it was yesterday, about some U.S. politicians talking about the sacrifices Mexico has made in order to help Trump shut down that border. They've actually absolutely laid down their lives to shut down that border and help them, but they know their economic future rides on it. Canada's taking the opposite approach.
Satias Maximus Hello says, it just shows how entitled liberals live in a dream world where they think they can do what they want. Talking about the Jersey Shore incident.
Okay, let's go into Alberta and the World if we can.
Okay. And then we'll continue reading your comments. Okay, we'll make you suffer through the glitchiness. So let's just start with Tommy Robinson saying, quote, Labor gave Keir Starmer a standing ovation at his last PMQs today. Literally the same people who pushed him out of the job. Career politicians are the worst people in the world. And also, England, it's not coming home.
Standing ovation for destroying the country, and the next PM that's taken his seat is going to do absolutely nothing different. They're going to put Ukraine first, the UK last. It's going to put mass migration first. It's going to put its citizens last.
Mm-hmm.
Goodbye.
That's a defeated country with a defeated system, and Canada has the exact same system and is headed in the exact same direction. It is time to cut your losses, Alberta, and get out.
Yes. Do you want me to keep watching him?
No, that's good.
Okay. I mean, good riddance, but again, it's just going to continue happening until they get some backbone.
Yeah.
Which they also didn't show today during the match. At the end. They literally just gave up in the match. It was like a perfect metaphor for what England has done. They were doing well, and then they started losing, and they started losing control of the ball, and then they just gave up. Sorry. Next orator says, Lindsey Graham's sister, Danielle Graham Nordone, has officially been sworn in as U.S. Senator for South Carolina. Nordone will hold the seat until a special election is held.
Yeah, because Lindsey Graham passed away, as well as Mitch McConnell was in critical condition. It seems like he's getting slightly better, but he's not going to be there. The SAVE Act is really up in the air. We don't know what's going to happen with it. So I do hope she is a supporter of the SAVE Act, because it will have a huge impact on 2028. It's yet to be seen even if it's passed, will they be able to implement it in the actual midterms? I don't think so. It might be a little bit too late, but...
You want me to play it?
Oh, you can play it just so people know. This is a big news story.
Please raise your right hand.
Okay, and you can leave it there. She's just being sworn in. That being said, nobody really knows which way she's going to vote on the SAVE Act, so it will come out here shortly.
And now something we used to talk a lot about. Peter Zainong says, quote, Democrats are doubling down on plans to pack the Supreme Court. The irony is if they succeed, they could finally topple the progressive Leviathan.
Yeah, and this is why the 2028 elections are so important, as well as Alberta independence. We need somebody in there that is supportive to recognize Alberta as an independent nation after Donald Trump, especially if we're not able to oust Danielle Smith and she extends the timeline like she's talked about in quite a few interviews already.
A series of pro-Trump Supreme Court decisions are reviving Democrat efforts to pack the Supreme Court, which would effectively gut the court's ability to strike down laws, turning it into a congressional rubber stamp. Joe Biden's handlers proposed just firing the conservatives, keep it simple. Kamala suggested expanding the Supreme Court to swamp them. Nancy Pelosi, progressive replacement, who will run the House come November, says, quote, everything's on the table on court packing. Now, this is all interesting for a couple reasons. First, because fear of court packing is a major reason why Republicans keep the filibuster that ties their hands behind their back on existential issues like election security, in the forlorn hope that Democrats will politely reciprocate when they...
Now, I'm absolutely against court packing. The problem with that is the Democrats have made it extremely clear. All the leaderships from all the factions said they want to pack the Supreme Court. At the point they came out and said it that blatantly, if they win the next election, that's the first thing they're going to do. Trump should have went ahead and did it himself at that point.
They are already promising to gut the court, which would require ditching that same filibuster. But more important, if we walk through the consequences of gutting the Supremes, there are a couple of very interesting silver linings. For starters, if the Supreme Court cannot declare laws invalid, neither can progressive Obama judges. You gut the entire left-captured judicial coup that is currently blocking voters. More important, if the Supremes are gone, you revert to the system the Constitution actually intended, where states decide what is constitutional, nullifying anything they disagree with. So California...
Now, if that was the result of packing the Supreme Court and the states took back power, I would be absolutely in favor of it. I always said that is the strength of the United States, that each individual state can disagree. People will vote with their feet, and states should be able to decide. If Canada had more of that, that would be good as well. I just don't know if that would be the result of packing the Supreme Court, but let's hear a little bit more.
Californians get their abortion on demand. South Dakota, life begins at conception. New York gets a wealth tax, but Nevadans, whose constitution forbids any income tax, stop paying a penny to the IRS. If this all sounds far-fetched, consider states already regularly ignore federal law, from sanctuary cities to marijuana legalization, and nothing happens, because there is no mechanism for the Supremes to force obedience. It is an illusion, as Andrew Jackson allegedly remarked when he disobeyed the court on Cherokee removal. Quote, Judge Marshall has made his decision, now let him enforce it. So the background here is the Constitution actually does not give the Supreme Court the power to strike down federal laws, called judicial review.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And I think if the Democrats did pack the Supreme Court and then states said, well, we have the final say, not the federal courts, I think the Democrats would send in the military at that point to try to actually enforce it, which would be ridiculous. Also, I would like what's happened in Canada. Local governments and provincial governments are supposed to have a lot more power than they do, and they've completely flipped the system on their head. And now the federal government is basically dictating for all Canadians what the law of the land is.
Sorry, I was looking for something. Lastly, Wall Street Ape says, quote, people in South Africa are created armed groups and are going door to door searching for illegal migrants to remove them from their country. Armed citizens are even checking immigration status in the streets.
And we can go into the clip here. They'll explain it, but I will say this. We need to just cut off any benefits for migrants. So they will self-deport, cut off all benefits, and give $500 and a plane ticket back home or anywhere else they want to go in the world that will take them, and they will self-deport. We don't want it coming to this. Trump's program of self-deportation has been the most successful part of his deportation program, where he gives $2,500 to any migrant that goes to an airport, and he gives them a plane ticket anywhere in the world that will take them, including their home country. One other thing here, this is South Africa. We all know what happened to white farmers in South Africa. That's why you have to take this particular thing with a grain of salt.
South Africa has deported 53,000 migrants in the past 5 weeks after the ruling ANC party launched a, quote, migration management campaign. The action was prompted after anti-migrant rioting broke out across the country. With reports armed mobs had been going door to door in search of migrants, warning them to either leave or face violence.
Okay, you can leave it there. And I will say there's mass protests in Tijuana as well, because migrants are no longer able to get over the border. So now they're having to remain in Mexico, and the Mexicans do not like it at all. And they want deportations, and they want the government to start doing these deportations.
Mm-hmm. But now we'll go back into your comments, and then we're heading over to RUMBLE for the last few stories. Todd says, free trade with the U.S., we're going to get rich and better for sure. Yeah. Doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure that out, but apparently Mark Carney can't.
If you have all the natural resources within the province, they don't have to be shipped anywhere. Therefore, it should be cheaper for you to manufacture. Yes, you might have other inputs like minimum wage costs and things like that. But, oh God, I lost my train of thought again where I was going with that.
I don't know.
Oh, but you'll if you can compete with the Americans, then that means you'll be able to compete on a world market as well, and your products will be successful on a world market. Canada has a oh, there's a fly, has a lot of problems because they create these monopolies and then they can't sell outside of Canada even because the prices are just too high.
Sean says if Canada wants to define itself as an enemy to the USA, then its technical recession will become a technical depression. And that's where they're headed, but okay. Stephen Jensen says, your passport discussion was very well done. Thank you. There's an actually full-length video that's coming out. It was supposed to come out yesterday, but will come out tomorrow, Thursday. Todd says, yeah, like the U.S. Consulate being, messed up with pew-pews in Canada, then an officer unalived when investigating it. Exactly. Sean says, put in the next technocrat loser, United Kingdom. Exactly. This is what we all know to expect. Todd says, get the F out of here, Starmer, you goof. Stephen Johnson says, be a NA Republic, Canada, build absolutely nothing, anywhere near anything.
Well, and I will say something else. It was very interesting. We have the article tomorrow that we're going to talk about, but the Bank of Canada came out today and said, well, yes, we're in a technical recession, but it looks like we might be able to pull out of that because the U.S. economy is doing so well, which is crazy because Mark Carney is trying to detach from that economy, and that's the one thing that's saving him right now. If Trump cancels the USMCA at any point, especially after the midterms, could be very likely, that would be it for Canada. They're hanging on by a thread right now, and that thread is called the USMCA. Even the Bank of Canada is pointing that out today.
Todd says, Star Mures is a goof, is my opinion. Sean says,
as much as a goofy as he is, and I completely agree, I don't like him in any way, shape, or form. The new guy's even more liberal than he is.
Because, of course. Sean says, given how many prime ministers they have had, I bet both Farage and Lowe will be prime ministers. Yeah, at some point.
Yeah, it needs to be Rupert Lowe. Now, Farage is going through a huge scandal along with Reform UK. I hope a lot of those voters from Reform UK start waking up and go over to Rupert Lowe's party.
Sean says, Republicans need to pack the Supreme Court.
It's a shame to have to say that because Republicans don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Conservatives don't like that idea. But when the Democrats come out and say, that's the first thing we're going to do when we get into power, and it's not just one Democrat, it's every leadership of every sub-faction within the Democratic Party are saying they're going to do that. Trump wanted to do it. The conservatives just won't do it. So
Stephen Jensen says he should be on trial for absolute treason, meaning Starmer. Todd says Starmer reminds me of that goof Prime Minister of Australia. That too.
Oh, I forgot to say one other thing here. With Starmer, he's looking to take over one of the big positions within NATO after this. So, and he was so attached with Ukraine, and he was putting Ukraine first when he was Prime Minister. So I think it was Merz is currently running NATO, I think.
I think so still. I don't remember.
Yeah, I think he's looking to replace him once he steps down.
Sean says the problem isn't federalism. Democrats don't want federalism. They use foreign-born federal judges to stop the will of the people, and who they vote for. Federal judges are a huge ongoing problem. Sean says, and he is right, judicial review was created by the Supreme Court itself with Marbury versus Madison. It's not outlined in the Constitution, Article 3 at all. Because Sean knows a lot about law. I think he's a lawyer. Todd says that's how they all do it. Woke judges that take money. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, this is why Alberta needs to get out. The judiciary, even if the Conservatives get in Canada, are going to completely freeze Poilievre out. They were even able to do it to Trump in his first term. Now, he woke up and he learned the game real quick. That's why the second term, he's having a lot more success.
Todd says we can pull dragons from the ground. Go to Texas, no problem. Let's go drill, baby, drill.
And there's a lot of dragons in the ground in Alberta.
And Mike Freedom Honey, hello. And thank you, says smash the like button or we lose independence. Thank you so much, Mike.
And Mike's watching. We seen your comment that you were going to interview Keith Wilson, but I didn't know where to see that.
When or where?
Yeah, because I was looking for it.
Let us know. Philip Vespa says it's not a deal that cedes sovereignty, Harrison. It's a deal that links Canada to American prosperity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of moving away, literally pushing it away. Retardedness. Pete says, in modern times, the Canadian Shield, the Rockies, is an illusion.
Yeah.
Philip Vespa says, and another thing, I don't want to see a version of CanCon laws in an independent Alberta. Canadian Conservative, yeah. Pete says, I mean, we don't hide in the mountains like Afghanistan. And Casey Willis says, Eastern Canadians are liberals and they're a lost cause. Alberta needs to go ASAP.
Yeah, and that's, I think a lot of people are starting to wake up to national conservatives in Canada, and Alberta conservatives are just a different breed at this point.
And Pete says Canadian laws are just loopholes.
Yeah.
Casey Willis says communism infiltrated Canada in the name of liberalism, and now they are voting for it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. What I said, I think it was Berta Proud Dad that brought up the idea of direct democracy, and I said, not in Canada. They will literally vote communism in at this point. That's how indoctrinated that they are, and that's how many people that would vote for freedom on a national level have already left the country. In Alberta, direct democracy might work, but for the rest of Canada, it is not a good thing.
Todd says, Starmer getting a job with NATO and being involved with Ukraine sounds really corrupt, guy. Sounds like a warmonger to me, in my opinion, says Todd.
Oh, could we repeat that?
Todd says, Starmer getting a job with NATO and being involved with Ukraine sounds really corrupt, guy. Sounds like a warmonger to me, in his opinion.
Yeah, Krista Freeland goes over to Ukraine directly after Canada, and she's responsible for the billion-dollar contracts to be handed out, and they're all being handed out. 5 of the 7 so far have been handed out to, not BlackRock, but Canada, Brookfield Asset Management, which is absolutely crazy. And now Starmer is going to go there. When he was funneling money over there as well, he's probably going to be the one to hand out the contracts as well.
Oh, Mike, thank you. So then during the telethon last hour.
Oh,
so at 10
okay.
p.m. on Saturday, the 18th. Yes.
Oh God, Keith is going to be a busy man because we're interviewing Keith that day as well.
I think he's just going to be on with everybody. And Mike says Derek, himself, Tiff, and Keith.
Yeah.
Cool. Look forward to it.
And I told Derek yesterday, thanks for sticking up to us. We had some trolls online
Sticking up
bothering
for
us.
Not up to us.
Yeah,
Yes.
for us.
Stephen Jensen says, best quote of the week so far, quote, if politics changed anything, it would be made illegal. Literally. Yeah. But okay, now speaking of Derek, let's go over to RUMBLE quickly and then we'll head out. But before we go over there, please don't forget to subscribe. Again, it really does help us out. And as you go, hit the like button as well. There's a 30-second wait screen and then you'll see us pop up over there.
And I'll say for everybody that's not going to join us over there and is going to go watch the Unacceptable Fringe, tell them we said hi and we'll see you guys tomorrow.